Do you think this is lawful?
There's a lot to unpack there, as Professor Dershowitz suggested. I think that there are serious questions that are ultimately going to have to be worked out by the Supreme Court, and how they come down, is really anyone's guess right now. But you start with a couple propositions. States could do this, at least under existing law. Since 1905, states and localities have had the power to require vaccination. It came up in the smallpox context 100 years ago. So the question is, can the federal government do it? And that's a much different question, because states have a general police power. The federal government does not have a general police power, so it has to be under one of the enumerated powers of the Constitution. Now,
and wait, let me pause you there and just ask a quick question. The fact that states can do it, is that why my schools every year have been able to require me to provide proof of the MMR vaccine in my kids?
That's absolutely right. That's where that's coming from, that the states have the power to protect the general health. Now, does the federal government have that power? No, it has to have some tie to interstate commerce or some other relationship to federal powers. Does the president alone have that power? Absolutely not. So he couldn't have, and it would have raised a huge constitutional problem if he just said everyone has to get vaccinated. So he didn't do that. He's saying, I'm going to do this 80 million people at a time. So what he's doing is, let's go through the workplace. The Occupational Safety and Health Administration is a Department of Labor organization, a Department of Labor agency, and it has power to make workplace safety and health rules.
Yeah, they're the ones who come through if your machinery is falling apart. It might fall on the employees. They cite the business and they pay a fine or they get in trouble. So he's using OSHA somehow to make this happen. How's he doing that?
Well, first of all, the biggest point in that, this isn't a workplace problem, Megyn. I mean, you're not hearing COVID is a significant workplace problem. Right. COVID is a significant societal problem. So the president's trying to solve a general societal problem with a law that deals with the workplace. Now, OSHA has the power to make standards for the workplace to make the workplace safer and more healthy. And this is where, Megyn, you learn that the federal government has massive powers. Mm-hmm. And the powers of the under the statutory powers of OSHA are just anything it thinks reasonable or appropriate for workplace safety. Well, that could capture this, but good God, this is unlike anything it's ever done before. Now, the other thing they want to do is cram it down immediately, forego any public comment, and just get this effective right away. Well, Congress has said to OSHA, you can only do that when there is a grave danger. And a grave danger is really quite a stretch here. What the president is saying is, I got to protect unvaccinated people. I got to protect vaccinated people from unvaccinated people. But in the same breath, he said only 1 in 160,000 vaccinated people have ended up in the hospital.
Right.
Now, how's that grave danger especially in the workplace? So Professor Dershowitz has talked about this in constitutional terms. The first question is, can Congress give this massive power to OSHA to make whatever rules it wants, right? With very little standards. I got to tell you, under existing law, there's every suggestion that it can, because there's such a wide open deferential standard about what Congress can delegate to a federal agency. But some of the conservatives on the Supreme Court have gotten doubtful about this whole doctrine, which is called the non-delegation doctrine, and are starting to raise questions about it. Will they raise questions about OSHA's general power here? Quite possibly. But even if you set that aside and look at the statute and what Congress has said the agency can do, is this really reasonably necessary to a safe workplace? Well, this is a societal problem. We're not having outbreaks in workplaces as far as the evidence shows.
Well, and can I ask you about that? So I raised this when I was talking at the top of the hour without you guys. What about natural immunity? All those people who have had COVID, who have natural immunity, and by some studies, the latest one I think showed It's greater than, in at least one study, a legitimate study, they showed it's greater than that you'd get with the vaccine. But the administration continues to ignore that fact. They don't want to talk about it. The CDC doesn't want to talk about it. Can't those people file a lawsuit, as we saw one college professor just do against his university is trying to make him get a vaccine, even though he's had COVID, and say, you can't, there is no emergency when it comes to me. I don't need the vaccine. You can't make me get a medication I don't need.
Megyn, you never left Jones Day. That's exactly what this lawsuit would look like. The individual who has natural immunity would say, there's no emergency as to me, and you shouldn't have crammed this down. This is the very sort of factor you should have considered in public notice and public comment. You should give the public an opportunity to vet these issues and respond to them. But you're just cramming this down under an emergency rule when there is no grave danger. I think that's where the real vulnerability of this whole thing is this emergency crammed down nature of this.
Okay, and so just to round up and make it clear, so when you're dealing with an administrative agency like OSHA, we saw this even with the Department of Education when they tried to change the rules for trying sexual harassment cases and assault cases. When you're dealing with an administrative agency, you need to allow public comment on rule changes. The public gets to weigh in and potentially stop it, and they didn't do that. Only in sweeping emergency cases can the chief executive, the president, say, no, we're not doing any of that. I've got these superpowers when it comes to national emergencies, massive dangers, that I can skip that. And you're saying it doesn't look like he does in this circumstance. And they may get challenged on skipping the rule and the comment and all that stuff too.
That's right. But skipping the rule and the comment is a way to shut down the whole thing, because a court would come in and say, you didn't do it right. You don't have the power to do this in an emergency rule. Start over. And so the rule could be enjoined. The 80 million person workplace rule could be enjoined on that basis alone.